Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmidt. I often get asked if I cover change management. So the reality is that almost all of leadership is really about managing change, either within yourself or your team. There are some key steps and a process that is laid out around change. So that's an important part to know. But if you do all of that without those leader skills and those relationship building skills and trust building skills and empathy, then you're probably going to be missing something or not as good at change management as you would like to be. So there's like a practical part and there's the softer skills or the soft hard skills part that I would like to talk about today. So first I'm going to go through the mechanics of it. So I'll give you the 5+1 stages of change management that studies have kind of shown that people go through and some key ways to support your team members through that as a leader. And then I'm going to talk about the softer side of it. So the less tangible, the harder to define part of it that will give you that special nuance to make yourself just a little bit better. So let's get started. So the steps in change. So there are 5 main steps. So I'm going to go through those first and kind of walk you through each one. And then there's this 6th step that none of us really want, but does come into play most of the time in some fashion. So the first step of change or the stage of change is actually pre-contemplation. So if you pause and think about what is this pre-contemplation thing you speak of, it sounds like a funny word, but what it is it's actually before you've even started considering the change. And you might be asking, okay, why is this a stage in change? But it's because that it is there. And every time before you start to change, there is a lack of awareness of the need to change. So I talked about this in a couple of other episodes about the learning process. And it's that unconscious, incompetent phase that we're kind of talking about here. Because again, this is still a learning process. Change is part of a learning process. So this is, you don't know what you don't know. So either you don't realize you need the change or you haven't even considered the need for change yet in some fashions because you might not be aware of the opportunity or you might not be aware of the thing you're not doing well. So this is like before you get started. So as a leader, there may be things that you notice, and these would be those things you maybe get feedback on that you notice about your team member. The ways to help the person go from pre-contemplation to the next step, which is actually contemplation, is to make them aware or to help them see the need for the change. And there are several ways to do that. And I have several podcast episodes around feedback. That is really the main one. So you start with feedback, if there's a very specific thing that needs to be done, or you can, like maybe it's a new thing that's come along and maybe you want your person to do this, then, mentioning it and bringing it up. So basically you're bringing attention to this need for change. Sometimes that can go better than others because of the walls that we put up or fear around that change. But ultimately, the way for a leader to move person from pre-contemplation to contemplation is to make them aware. And generally that is through feedback or some kind of sharing of this information that, hey, there's this thing, right? So you're making people aware and bringing awareness upon it. Doing that in the most supportive way possible, you can find out how to do in some of my other feedback episodes. The second stage, as I mentioned, is contemplation. Now, this stage can look a lot of different ways because if you've ever gone through a change, which everyone has changed in some fashion, there is a point when you're saying, is this something I want to do? Is this worth the effort? Is this problem big enough that I want to resolve it or that I need to resolve it? So this can come when you're a leader and you're helping somebody through it. This can come through several ways as well. So the best way is to have some coaching sessions around it. And I've talked a bit around what a coaching session looks like, but essentially these one-on-one sessions are time for your employee to just talk through what they're feeling, what they're considering, what they're struggling with, or what they're proud of, and for you both to come up with what's the next step? How do I move forward? And the idea of it and the whole purpose behind these one-on-one sessions is that you're helping to build that relationship, you're building that safety, and you're building that rapport where somebody is safe to bring things up. So if you have this environment set up, this move from the pre-contemplation to contemplation will be easier. And this contemplation process will look a little bit more smooth, but it's still going to be, it really depends on what the change is and where the person is starting from. So things that you might consider doing are just saying, well, what does this feel like? The thought of making this change, what does that feel like for you? And really trying to dig into, like, get really curious, not judgmental, but very curious about what it looks like for the person physically, like what would those actions look like, and what it feels like and looks like inside their head. So try to say, like, well, what comes up for you? Is it exciting at all? And what feels scary about it? That kind of thing. So because essentially this stage is when they're creating the will to do it, right? This is either you're creating the will or the want to do it and that motivation to do it, or you're saying, you know what, it's just not worth it. So that this can take some time. It may not be a one and done sort of thing, particularly if it's like a big life-changing sort of thing. Like, let's say you're trying to contemplate whether you're going to quit your job and start a business, or if you're going to like move across the country, like, maybe if you're in a large organization and there's an opportunity in a different location, like that would be a longer contemplation versus, okay, some of things not quite going well, let's contemplate what we're going to do about it. It's basically that deciding factor. So that's the first two stages. Once you're through contemplation, so again, this is kind of like where you've decided I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. So if you're not going to do it, obviously you go back to, you're not in that stage of change anymore. But if you are going to do it, now you're in this preparation. So this is when I would say that you're really going to plan the goal out. You're going to plan this change. You're going to say, okay, what do I need? Who do I need? Who does this impact? What does this impact? So if you're doing the big change, like a move or something, you're saying, okay, this impacts like all of these stakeholders plus me, plus, my work team, all of that. So you're taking into account all of the nuances about the change, and you're identifying, okay, do I need training? Do I need assistance from an outside party or from my leader or from my whole team? Or what does this look like? So we have a great little goal plan that you can use that will help you get an idea of what needs to happen. So that should be filled out or discussed or the goal written down during this stage. Again, you're going to have some back and forth conversations. You're going to want that person to kind of do some planning on their own, but you're going to want to chat through it. Because as an outside person, you can have a better objective opinion and objective look at what the plan is. And, different geniuses are going to be a little bit more detail orientated about some of the planning. Like, I know I benefit from somebody who's got a bit more detail, a bit more tenacity to look at my goal plans or to look at and to discuss and bounce ideas off of as I'm creating them, because it just helps. So once you've prepared, now you're going to do the thing, right? So this is when you start getting the actions in motion. So you're going to, take the training course. So start executing your plan. So take the training course, start doing the first stages of your action plan, start involving or having conversations with the people that are involved and helping them through it. This part, again, as a leader, will feel hard. This could be a very quick thing, because when you're changing, it could be like you're starting a habit, right? So it could be a very quick thing, like I'm going to start working out in the morning and getting up an hour earlier, that kind of things. That's kind of like there are some preparations that you would want to put into place for it, but essentially it's a quick and a shorter sort of time frame, but it could also be a longer sort of time frame. And no matter what it is, there's going to be a support that needs to be felt or that needs to be given to the person who's doing the work, because they're still doing their normal work, but they're also doing this goal too, or this change as well. So there's going to be times when the action doesn't go well or they fall behind. So there's going to be some feedback in there. There's also going to be times when maybe it doesn't go well, or somebody they're talking to or working with isn't responding or isn't reacting well. So they're going to need your support through that. So again, those times that sitting down with them and talking about the goal, how is it going? How is this action going? Okay, so why isn't it done? And there might be a level of accountability in there saying, okay, I understand that you're struggling with all of this and we still need to get the action done. So a little bit of tough love, but also that understanding, that empathetic view around it, that there might be some things inside that are making it a little bit harder for the person to put that change into play or to get the actions done. So there could be some adjustments done during this time frame. So let's say you're having the conversation, you're saying, I way underestimated the amount of time that having all of these meetings effort that will, like keeping the motivation up, like that will all come into play during this time frame. The next phase, let's say you get all the action done, you've gone through all the slog of getting all of these things done, and whatever the change might be, you're doing it. Now you're in this maintenance mode. So sometimes we think once we're completed the action plan, we're like, done's Wenza, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. But there is a maintenance mode to it. That can be a period of like 30 days, some would say 90 days, but essentially there's going to be a time frame when the change, particularly the behavior changes, say there's new metrics being tracked, or new meetings being had, or new systems to be followed. So there's a time frame when we're going to have to keep tracking it in order to keep it visible with people so that it continues to happen. Maybe not strong in that maintenance sort of side. So for whatever reason, it could be lack of tenacity. It could be maybe they struggle with the galvanizing thing of trying to get others on board to keep going, or to follow up to make sure that keeps happening. So depending on the personality or the geniuses and the frustrations of this person, you may need to support them differently. You may need to galvanize them to galvanize, or check in more when they have to do those kind of tenacity things, or maybe attend some of their meetings to make sure they're happening and make sure that their meeting skills are up to par, because maybe you missed that in the planning phase. So there's Atomic Habits, there's 5 a.m. Club, there's all these books about habits starting. They actually, or at least 5 a.m. Club actually says that it will take about 90 days to really lock a change in. So if you really think about this maintenance time, you have to think about it. It will likely be 3 months or more. Probably longer, especially if it's not something that's done every single day. So keep that in mind, that it's not just track for 30 days and then say, oh yeah, we're good, because people can do things in the first 30 days and be super excited about it and say, yep, it's not more work, or it is more work, but it's totally cool, it's fine. But then like real life kicks back in at some point, the excitement wears down, or like that initial kind of like urge to do it starts to wear down and it starts to feel hard. And that's usually like month 2. So this is like that hard time frame of when you have to keep pushing. So in that maintenance mode as a leader, you really want to speak to that team member and say, okay, but how is it going? How are you feeling about it? How motivated are you to go and follow up with all these people that need to do the change, or to keep doing the thing that you said you would do, or that you did all this work? So you've got to kind of keep reminding them of why they chose to do this change, or what the motivation, the reason behind it was, in order to keep through that maintenance period. And then like that last 30 days, like that's when it starts to become a habit. You start to see a little bit of traction, because sometimes when we make changes, it feels worse. It's like, this is not easier, this is harder. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes our change maybe wasn't well thought out or wasn't well planned. But a lot of times it's because it's new that it feels harder. And that change just is causing actually the wear and tear to make it feel harder. Whereas once you get through that period of time of when you're getting used to it, while you're moving through that learning process again, to get to the unconscious competent portion of the change cycle, or the learning cycle, which is beyond the maintenance part, then like once you're there, like that's when it starts to feel easier, and that's when you'll see the benefits, and that's when things will start to take off and really you'll be ready to start looking for the next change. So in theory, that's all of them. However, what happens a lot, and it can happen in any phase through it, is you go to relapse, right? And so it is a very distinctly called out stage in the change mode, because you might come in and out of relapse through every single stage because it's just that hard. So as a leader, you need to be on the lookout for the relapse. I know personally, I tend to wear out in that maintenance period. Like I might do all these things and I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited I got it done, but I relapse in maintenance a lot. And that's me, my personality. I know that. So if I know that in advance, we can put some preparations in place to do some really good communication around that maintenance timeframe. But maybe the person you're working with is falling down a lot, maybe just even in contemplation. And they're like, they can't make the decision to get started. That's still a form of relapse. Or maybe in the action planning, they just wear out completely from doing it. And they say, I can't do it anymore. Or they stop working on the action plan. So this relapse can happen a lot. And obviously, depending on the change, you're going to end up going back to stage one, basically, or between 1 and 2. That's pre-contemplation and contemplation. So it could be pre-contemplation if they haven't noticed that they've relapsed, but they definitely have to do the contemplation part again and say, is this still important? It might be a change that has to happen. So you're going to say, well, yes, it's still important. What's getting in the way of you feeling that it's still important, or what's getting in the way of you executing the actions to get it done? So that's kind of that contemplation portion where you're trying to rediscover the will again to do the project or to do the change. Then you'll have to go re-prepare. Okay, so what fell apart? What more do we need to put into place? So you're preparing again. Then you're going to go and do these new actions or continue the action plan with the new added adjustments to it to make sure you stay motivated. And then you finally move back into maintenance mode. So this relapse again, it always sets you right back to the beginning and will require some level of change because something caused you to relapse. And so the change might be, again, up here, the change might be, I pointed to my head for those on the audio only. The change might also be because you didn't observe something or you didn't recognize that something outside of that would be a problem. So those are your 6 stages. Now, you may have heard me kind of talking a lot through there about this kind of softer side emotional support. So I want to talk about what's really going on with the person who's doing the change. This can be a change that is like a very simple task to just start doing, all the way to this huge move or a huge installation of a new program or new project at a facility. So no matter what the change size is, there are emotions and stress that come on. If you recall from some of the other episodes, stress is actually our body's natural reaction to protect itself. So something in your body sees danger, and it is your body's way of saying, whoa, danger, stay away. We need to protect my human, right? So it's your body's trying to just protect you. So let's be empathetic about it. It's our natural thing, and our body's just trying to keep us safe, but it's still there, and we still have to address it. So I just want to tell a story about myself here to just try to illustrate what that stress can do, because there is going to be a level, whether it's a physical thing or a mental thing, there's going to be a level of sheer exhaustion, physically, potentially, and mentally and emotionally. So I'm going to talk about something very simple that might seem silly to a lot of people, but it was eye-opening when, after I got through it, I was like, oh my gosh, that was just stress that was doing that to me. So when I became a single mom, I had to do something that I had only done once, twice, maybe 3 times in my life prior, and that was mowing the lawn. I know this sounds nuts, right? But I'd always, when I lived alone, I had apartments, so I didn't have to mow the lawn. And then I got married, so I didn't have to mow the lawn. So I just never did it. So anyway, I buy this mower and I went and I bought used because I'm like, I could get a better thing for used and for the same price, that kind of thing. So mistake when you don't know how to fix it. But so I would go out there to start mowing the lawn. And it would be this like huge preparation for me to go. It felt like it was going to, like, in my mind, this task was going to take hours. It was going to be hard. I'm just motivating myself to get out there and do it was hard because I was like, this is daunting. I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't really know how to use this machine. And it turns out the machine was kind of broken. All right. So I would get out there and I'd do it. But when I came in, I was exhausted. Like all I could do was like sit on the couch almost the rest of the day. And I was like, this is nuts. Why is mowing the lawn? Like literally I'm walking behind something. This had a self-propelled thing, so I wasn't even pushing it. But walking behind this thing through my yard, decent size, but not huge, like definitely walking mower level size. Why am I so exhausted? Like at the time when I started doing this, I was lifting weights, doing like a 45-minute workout in the mornings, I had run marathons before, but I had this sheer exhaustion. And I remember mentioning it to some people who also mow the lawns. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how exhausted I get when I'm done with, thinking it's just a normal thing, right? Because this has happened to me like every time I was doing it. And I was like, I am physically like wrecked when I'm done doing it. And they kind of looked at me funny and didn't agree. And I was like, maybe this is just me. And so I started thinking about it, and it was still happening. It happened a lot, and it lessened a little bit. Like I wasn't just flopped on the couch like I was the first time, but it was a little bit less, but I was still very tired after getting done. Or as the mower started breaking on me, I was very frustrated and very annoyed, but just that sheer physical exhaustion. So now here I am 2 years later, new mower, actually new, that works. I can go out there and hammer this thing out in like 45 minutes to an hour. I enjoy it. I like doing it and feel energized and really good when I'm done. So just take a step back from that. Like mowing the lawn is simple. There is nothing technical really about it. Like, yes, maybe if you want to, like I learned how to do the diagonal thing. So, there's some nuance to it and, making sure you kind of get the edges right and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's not hard physically. It's not hard skill wise. But the sheer exhaustion when I first started doing it was just insane and was really a result of this change, maybe some emotions tied to it, because why do I have to cut the grass? You know what I mean? Like those kind of emotions. But then there's also just like this stress and frustration part because, things weren't going well. It was a new task that I had these like negative thoughts about. So all of these things that kind of come into play that I didn't realize when I was going through it. So as a leader, it's important to have those conversations, to dig into that with your team member and just kind of say, okay, well, what do you feel like when you're getting ready to do this thing? All right, so is that true? Like, so let's say they have to have this new meeting. What does it feel like? And maybe they're like getting all, well, people aren't going to show up. They're not going to have their actions done. I'm going to have to like, hold them accountable or whatever it is. Like maybe they're having all these thoughts around it and maybe they're nervous they're going to mess up or something like that, or the agenda's not right. And so like, are these thoughts true? Like in my case, the mower was breaking. So yes, that was true. But like, it wasn't hard. It wasn't stressful. It wasn't physically exhausting. So those were not true. And had I been able to kind of uncover some of that, it may have removed some of it. And then we could have gotten to the root cause of, you got to get a new mower. You shouldn't have bought that one. So there's a lot of kind of peeling back the onion that you're going to need to do through every phase of the change because of that stress that your body's going to undergo that you may or may not see or feel as the person going through the change, but being very aware that that might be happening and it might be putting that person into a sheer exhaustion mode, again, emotional or physical exhaustion, and being aware of that and helping them to see it and then creating some kind of an action or solution around that. So whether it's, hey, take a break. Like I want you to, like when you're done with that meeting, go and reflect or come chat with me or whatever that person might need at the time to really get through it. Or maybe in preparation for it, they have to talk through it and get the reality of what's actually happening in there to help get it better. And the biggest thing too is starting just to pull out, okay, what went well about the meeting? Where did you shine? Where did you do the thing that you were supposed to do? And so starting to recognize those positive aspects around it, because again, that's going to start changing those thoughts and proving that they're either correct or incorrect, right? So usually when you're going through a change, you'll start to see the benefit of it and you'll start to see those negative thoughts, maybe they're not correct, or maybe there's a different change to them, or maybe it's not as hard as I thought. So helping your employee to see all of that will help them to kind of understand that they're going through the exhaustion and then lessen it. So finally, I want to touch on something else here, and that is, what does the leader do, right? As a leader, you're still a human being. You are not superhuman. You still go through these stages when you're going through change, and you're still going to have that emotion and that stress that will come with it. So whether you're the one doing the change or you're helping support someone through the change, you're likely going to go through these things as well. So it's important to recognize them within yourself, even as you're helping someone else. And if needed, get support from someone else, whether it be a coach or a counselor or a friend or a spouse or your leader. All of these areas are great ways to start and to get help through your levels of change, but ultimately recognizing it and understanding that you're going to feel those same things when you're putting change into play is important to recognize as well. And I want you to have support. So again, if you're in need of that support, or you would like some extra support in getting better at change management with your team, or extra support in getting change support when you're changing, then reach out to me and let me know how I can help, or we can chat about it and see what you might need to do to get some more support in that aspect as well. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please like it, share it with a friend or a colleague, leave a comment on the YouTube video, and leave a review. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something very practical that you can take away and go do today. The biggest thing is support your team members through every single stage of this change, because there are emotions that you're not seeing underneath the surface. So please do that. Please help your team members, and most importantly, help yourself, because you can't help them if you don't help yourself first. All right. And I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmidt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.